From the creators who gave us the Masters of the Universe versions of Freddy Krueger and Leatherface, we now have the first wave of figures of the Thundercats. Yes, it's the company known as Savage World who creates these figures who are not exactly like the Masters of the Universe from the 1980s, but you have to admit there is a lot of similarities between them. The first wave of figures is only 4 of them, which includes LionO, Panthr-O, Mumm-Ra, and Slithe. The box art on each one of these are pretty cool, as they do have a different interpretation of the different figures that they're representing. I mean, look how badass LionO looks in this picture. Although Panthr-O's picture, I have to admit, is probably the one that I love the best. Slythe's artwork looks really similar to the version of Slithe that came out from the 2000 series of Thundercats, which was done on Cartoon Network, which I also think is really underrated. It was an incredibly awesome show. The back of the packaging really doesn't have anything too special on it, with the exception of the figures that came out in the first wave and the second wave that will be coming out. I can't wait to get Cheetara. Before I open them up, I do gotta point out the MummRa's figure. I think he does look similar to the 2000 series of Thundercats as well. Anyways, enough about that. Let's go and open these guys up. And here are the figures. Each of them come with their iconic weapon, even though I don't really know if Slythe's weapon is technically iconic, but still, I do love the idea of seeing Panthr-O with his nunchucks with those claw things at the end. Here's Slithe with his big battle axe. Mumm-Ra comes with the Sword of Plundar, which I always thought was incredibly cool. And of course, LionO comes with the Sword of Omens and also the Claw Shield, which is itself removable, just like that. Let's go ahead and talk about LionO first. I have to point out there are a couple little errors in him. For one thing, you can see some of the paint already scratching off on his shoulder. And also underneath, you can see his crotch, the paint is also chipping off. Honestly, you get what you pay for. These aren't expensive figures, so you can't really ask for too much. It's not like it really takes away from the guy at all. Look at those red burning eyes. I love the detail in that. I always felt like LionO had like a stubble beard thing going around his mouth. I know that's just supposed to be like how his fur is, but still, it just kind of looked that way. View from the back, his back muscles are huge. You can see underneath, Funko LLC 2018, Funko.com. The definition in his claw shield is fairly good, and Savage World could have made the Sword of Omens into just one color without coloring in the Eye of Thundera, but I'm glad that they did do it. Look at that big old Thundercat emblem on his waist. Speaking of, damn, those abs are awesome. All in all, cool figure. I'm gonna display him next to my He-Man figure in a minute. Next, let's look at Panthr-O. I always loved that metal thing he had around his arm. It just made him seem like he was so much more badass, especially with his spiked leather harness. Look at that face, and look how pissed off he looks. I didn't see any paint issues with him, which I'm really happy about. I love Panthr-O. I think he was really cool, being that he was like the strongest out of the Thundercats, even though I guess technically LionO beat him in the trials and everything, but still, I kind of like the idea that there was one Thundercat that was stronger than the others. His feet are different from LionO's, being that he's wearing the Tabai boots. He was supposed to be a martial artist. You can see a view here from the back. Look at that booty. They also made sure to put in the detail that there were these straps going around his Tabai boots. I will say this, he is a very cool figure. His nunchucks are cool. Unfortunately, he can't hold them both in his hands. His hands are just pretty much stuck in that position, so you just have to let him hang down like that. Next up, let's look at Slithe. I'm glad the Savage World made sure to put one eye slightly below the other. He always kind of had that thing where it's like, hey, you looking at me, bub? And his body does look slightly different from the others. I mean, they are similar in a lot of respects, but you can see that there's less detail put in his abs as opposed to what's here in LionO's. I'm glad they made sure to give him his signature mutant tail, and he's got his spikes going down his back. He's got the armband going around him that is similar to what Panthr-O has. The axe is fairly well done, nothing too detailed, but still enough so that it does stand out a bit. I really have no idea what this would be called, but this does stand out from the others, being that his is more similar to what would be done with a Masters Universe toy line. And the final figure in this set is Mumm-Ra. I always loved his symbol. In fact, I kind of want to get this symbol tattooed. If you move up his bandage, you can see that there is indentation done in the actual sculpt, so you're not really supposed to move that bandaging up. Look at that face. You can see the fangs inside of his mouth. Mumm-Ra was probably one of the few competent villains that came out from the 1980s cartoon series. I mean, most cartoons back then, the villains were very incompetent, but Mumm-Ra was one of the few exceptions. The 1980s figure that came out did not include a cape, so I'm glad that this version does have one. Oh my god, he's wearing a mummy skirt. Oh, look at those feet, too. I always was kind of confused as to why he didn't wear some sort of boots or something like that, but being that he was supposed to be some sort of like Egyptian devil priest or whatever, I guess it makes sense for him to have this. Being that these are smaller figures, I guess it makes sense for the Sword of Plundar to be so small, but I would love this to be like basically larger than him himself, like something being like this huge. I mean, if you compare the two swords together, together, they're almost the same size. In the cartoon, the Sword of Plundar was almost twice the size of the Sword of Omens. Mumm-Ra is one of the few terrifying villains that I was actually legit afraid of back when I was a kid. So I think that the Savage World people did a great job with the sculpt. Let me go through the articulation of these figures. They're all essentially the same. First, we have movement in the head, movement in the arm, and some limited movement in the legs. For comparison purposes, I figured since these guys are in the same scale, you can see LionO finally teaming up with He-Man at the same time with Mumm-Ra teaming up with Skeletor. This is something I think would have been such an incredibly awesome storyline back then. Since then, we've had some comic book series that have had these guys team up together, but still, you know, back as a kid, I think this would have been incredibly awesome. Here's one final shot of these figures. I think they're pretty darn cool. I also put in the horror figures in the background, and I made sure to put He-Man and Skeletor in the back here, too. If you're interested in getting these guys, I personally got them on GameStop, but they're also available on Amazon. But with that, thank you guys for watching me in this video. Be sure to check out my Patreon site, check out my social media sites, my websites, and everything else out there. Peace, love, namaste, and I'll see you guys later. Peace. Oh my god, you know what would be really cool for Savage World to do next? Silverhawks. Does anyone remember Silverhawks? I thought they were awesome. I think that would have been a great crossover also with the Masters Universe toy line and also, of course, with the Thundercats.